Two of the most beloved men in 19th century literature both get rejected by the woman they love. Darcy proposes to Elizabeth. Elizabeth says no, and tells him exactly why. Laurie declares his love to Jo. Jo says no, and tells him exactly why. Both men are devastated. Darcy comes back, changed, and Elizabeth says yes. Laurie goes to Europe, meets Amy, and marries her instead. Same starting point, completely different ending. And the difference tells you everything these two novels suggest about men and about whether people are capable of changing themselves. After Elizabeth refuses Darcy's first proposal, he writes a letter. He writes not to renew his proposal, but to answer her accusations and explain himself, particularly about Wickham. He gives her the full history of what Wickham did to Georgiana, not to make himself look good, because she deserves to know the truth. Then he leaves. He doesn't follow her, he doesn't engineer encounters, and at some point between that letter and Elizabeth's visit to Pemberley, something shifts in him. Austen never shows us that inner process directly, but the novel strongly suggests that Darcy undertook it himself. Darcy later tells Elizabeth, "By you, I was properly humbled." Elizabeth initiated the reckoning, but the work of it, whatever form it took, was his alone. Elizabeth didn't make him better. He made himself better in response to what Elizabeth showed him.
Would you do me the honor of introducing me to your friends?
Certainly. Mr. and Mrs. Edward Gardiner, Mr. Darcy. Mrs. Gardiner is my aunt, Mr. Darcy.
Laurie's response to Jo's rejection is to collapse. He goes to Europe. He is, by Alcott's description, directionless and struggling, adrift in a way that music and travel don't seem to fix. And then Amy is there. Amy, who has also been growing up in Europe, who has matured from a self-centered girl into a thoughtful young woman, is reunited with Laurie in Nice when he is reeling. And she gives him something Jo couldn't, a different kind of relationship, one that complemented rather than competed. Their friendship deepens, their relationship develops, and Laurie begins to find his way back to himself.
You wrote you'd meet me at the hotel.
I couldn't find you anywhere.
Well, you didn't look hard enough.
Well, maybe I didn't recognize you because you're so beautiful
Oh,
now.
stop it.
I thought you liked that sort of.
One way to read this is that Amy became the relationship in which Laurie's maturity took shape. The novel presents her as the decisive influence in the form his growth ultimately took. Which raises a question the novel doesn't answer. If Amy hadn't been in Nice, what then? And here is where the two novels diverge in something deeper than plot. Pride and Prejudice suggests that once confronted with the truth, the work of change has to be your own. Elizabeth initiates the reckoning, but Darcy undertakes it alone, without anyone watching, without anyone helping him through it. Little Women suggests something different. Not that people can't grow, but that growth happens in relationship, through the right people arriving at the right moment. Laurie's maturity, as the novel presents it, is inseparable from Amy's presence. This is not a criticism of Alcott. It is a different understanding of how human beings actually change. And there's an argument that Little Women's version is more realistic, that most of us don't transform through pure private reflection, but need someone to reflect us back to ourselves. But there is something specific that Pride and Prejudice gives us that Little Women doesn't. When Darcy changes, the change belongs entirely to him. Amy became the relationship in which Laurie's growth took shape, which means the growth and the relationship are hard to separate. What happens to one without the other is a question the novel leaves open. And this connects to something these novels treat very differently. In Austen's novels, the men worth having are the ones who take moral responsibility for themselves, not just for their actions, but for their vision, for the way they see the world and the people around them. Darcy was wrong in how he separated Bingley and Jane. He was condescending in his proposal. He eventually acknowledged this, Not in the letter, which is more explanation than apology, but in what he did afterward, quietly, without being asked.
I offer myself to you again with a heart which is even more your own than when you almost broke it 8.5 years ago.
Wentworth, in Persuasion, maintained a deliberate emotional distance from Anne for years, a response to a wound he still carried. He recognized this eventually, in a letter he wrote himself, in a moment of decision that was entirely his own. In both cases, the woman shows the man something true about himself. The man then does something with it, alone. Laurie is a lovable character, but the novel builds him differently. His arc moves through relationship, not through solitude, which is a different kind of story and a different kind of hero.
2 rejections, 2 men, 2 very different ideas about what it means to grow up. Pride and Prejudice builds a man who changed in private, whose growth, whatever form it took, belonged entirely to himself. Darcy passes that test before Elizabeth arrives at Pemberley, before she has given him any reason to believe it would matter. Little Women builds a man who changed in relationship, whose growth was real, but inseparable from the person through whom it took shape. Amy and Laurie were reunited in Nice, and she became the relationship in which his maturity took shape. Both are true about different people, but they are not the same thing, and the man who changed because he examined himself is a different kind of man from the one who changed because the right person arrived. Tell me in the comments, which version of growth do you find more convincing? Darcy's or Laurie's? And does it change how you read their respective happy endings? I'm Sana. This is Monica's Pie. The story's never just the story.